Boxy Boo is one of the 3 main antagonists of Project Playtime, the multiplayer Poppy Playtime spin-off released just the other week. However, there's been a ton of mystery behind this character and his purpose because we don't really ever hear much about him. So today I wanted to theorize about who Boxy Boo is, what his purpose at Playtime Co is, and why I think he's going to be in Chapter 3 or even later in the game as one of the most important characters that you need to be watching out for. Also, as a quick interruption, if you're buying anything from the Poppy Playtime store this year for Christmas, make sure to use code SHEEP for 10% off and DM me you using it if you do. Anyway, back to the video. So first, who in the world even is Boxy Boo? Well, like we said, he's the Jack-in-the-Box toy inside of Project Playtime who is well known for his terrifying design and also his ability to camouflage as just an innocent, meaningless toy when in all reality inside he is a red, merciless killing machine. But outside of his demonic killer instinct, like the rest of the monsters, he was once a toy inside of Playtime Co. With there being some screenshots from the Poppy Playtime ARG that shows what Boxy Boo used to look like inside of the factory line, along with there being some art and cardboard cutouts that show that he actually used to be adorable. However, what sort of stands out about Boxy Boo above really any other character is that for the most part, we don't really know anything about him and his origin at all. We don't know who he is, what he sounds like, where he came from, or really anything at all. So who in the world is Boxy Boo and why does he even exist? Well, to find more about him, you have to dig really deep into the lore of Poppy Playtime. And I theorize that Boxy Boo will be more than just a random side character for Project Playtime, but I think he could be one of the most important characters in all of Playtime Co, being sided with people like Huggy Wuggy and even the prototype. And here's what I mean. So Project Playtime, while still in early access, already has a pretty well-established story that I've already talked about in previous videos. And to summarize, Project Playtime seems to be about a bunch of unnamed employees who were forced into doing this resource extraction specialist job. And whoever these employees were, they were sent into the factory to die. And we know that because in the tutorial, we hear the head of innovation of Playtime Co, Leith Pierre, tell us that he knew that they were hostile monsters in the factory and he sent us down there anyway. Which tells us that whoever was sent in here wasn't supposed to make it. And so the reason I think they needed to kill these employees is most likely because they had some sort of secrets that the company didn't want to get out. Especially after people like Rowan Stoll from the ARG before they were murdered were caught leaking the employee secret information to the public through different letters. So with all that being said, the theme of Project Playtime seems to be security and trying to keep all of the dark secrets of the factory under lockdown so they can keep running their experiments on the orphans inside of it, among many other things. But what happens when somebody attempts to tell the secrets of the factory? Well, this is where we think Boxy Boo starts to come in. Because if you followed along with the original Poppy Playtime ARG, it tells the story of an employee named Rowan Stoll who does just that, tries to leak all the secrets of the company out into the public. And as we know, after he leaks all this information, he ends up getting killed by Boxy Boo himself inside of the factory. Which then sort of brings up the question once again. Why was Boxy Boo so aggressive and why did he kill Rowan Stoll for speaking the secrets out? Well, to explain this, I've broken this up into 2 mini theories to potentially answer this exact question. The Boxy Boo pawn theory and the cult creation theory. So let's start with theory number 1, the pawn theory. So as we learned inside of Poppy Playtime in the notes throughout, as you may already know, the monsters inside of the factory usually have very defined purposes. In fact, this is confirmed inside of the hidden screening room for Project Playtime, where inside we hear about a Playtime Co employee bringing up the idea of using real-life versions of the toys as slaves to both avoid having to pay employees in the factory and also keep them from leaking their secrets out into the public. With toys like Huggy Wuggy being created as the factory security guard, Mommy Longlegs being the caretaker of the orphans inside of the game station, and then there's Boxy Boo. He's a box, and that's about it. So what is his purpose? Well, what's important to remember is that, like I mentioned earlier, in the Poppy Playtime ARG, we hear about Rowan Stoll leaking all of Playtime Co's secrets, and then afterwards getting murdered by Boxy Boo himself afterwards. And what's important about this is that Rowan Stoll knew he was going to die long before he actually did. After all, he made a whole VHS tape and letter that was sent to the public where he literally said that the company was after him and had malicious intent. And of course, as you could expect, after creating these VHS tapes and sending them out into the world, the story ends for Rowan Stoll by Boxy Boo of all people taking his body and remains in with him, leaving no trace for him to ever be found again. But what's interesting is that if we know Rowan Stoll was supposedly being attacked by the employees of Playtime Co, with them trying to do things to silence him like loosening his tires hoping he gets into a fatal car accident, it's clear that him being murdered by Boxy Boo wasn't an accident or being in the wrong place at the wrong time like when Huggy Wuggy or any of the others chase us, but rather it was a planned move from the company to attempt to keep their secrets quiet using deadly force. So with that being said, this is where the Boxy Boo pawn theory comes in. I think that Boxy Boo might have been a toy like the others who was created with a purpose in the factory. However, instead of doing something innocent like watching over toys or keeping the factory safe from potential intruders, I think Boxy Boo was simply created to be used as a pawn by Playtime Co. to directly attack and murder anything upon the order of the employees, so that way they didn't have to get blood on their own hands and clean up the mess left behind. If you remember, Boxy Boo was actually quite the controversial character for a while after he was revealed, because people pointed out that he was designed really weirdly, to be honest. With a box-shaped head and sharp red claws, it didn't really give the theme of a Jack-in-the-Box toy or anything like what people may have expected. But I wonder if that's because he wasn't designed as a toy for Playtime Co. or anything, but rather specifically was designed to be the most efficient as a murdering machine, specially designed to punish anybody who threatened the security of Playtime Co. I mean, think about it. He's a box that's easy to disguise so nobody ever notices a thing. And most importantly, he could spring out at any moment and hide the evidence of the bodies in a matter of seconds. To me, it feels like Boxy Boo was entirely created for the purpose of surprise murder attacks inside of the factory. In fact, he even has an ability inside of Project Playtime that allows him to hide inside of his box and charge up an attack without anybody suspecting him. That's theory number one, but let's move on to theory number two, the cult creation theory. So this is sort of a continuation of a theory I made a couple weeks ago or so, suggesting that Playtime Co. was some sort of cult, based on the fact that there are poppy symbols around the factory that suggest there was a joint group worshipping the poppy flower that was seen as responsible for giving the first experiment Poppy Playtime life. And when Project Playtime finally released, this theory got a ton of extra backing, with things like the poppy statue in the theater that have a bunch of flowers being grown around it, along with the addition of poppy colas on nearly everyone's desk, suggesting they could be consuming the flower itself in their own factory. If you do some digging, there's a lot to suggest that Playtime Co. itself is a cult. The love for a separate higher being, the over-obsession with mind-altering substances, the indoctrination of vulnerable kids through the orphanage program. It's an interesting rabbit hole that I suggest you look into, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, assuming Playtime Co. is this all-seeing cult, this is once again where Boxy Boo starts to come in, because cults are also known to make lots of sacrifices, or being willing to eliminate anybody who doesn't reside by their own beliefs. And of course, who would be better at doing something like this than Boxy Boo himself? I wonder if Boxy could have been created for the sole purpose of making sacrifices to the cult in the name of the poppy flower, and against anybody who had anything bad to say about their organization, like Roman Stoll. What's also super interesting is that, like I said in the first theory, the most standout part of Boxy Boo's design is his outlandish boxy shape with claws and sharp teeth. But what's almost oddly specific about him is his red and furry hair. Boxy realistically could have been designed to just any normal color. And while it may be a stretch to say this, I wonder if he was created red to show relation to the poppy flower itself. And I wonder if, similar to the Poppy Playtime doll, he was created using the poppy flower, and as a byproduct, he got this bright red furry hair, very similar to Poppy Playtime's hair as well. Assuming this is true, we can maybe theorize that Boxy Boo was related to Poppy Playtime in some way, and could have been created to aggressively attack anybody at demand of the cult. It's an interesting idea, but the theory doesn't end here, because I wonder if Boxy Boo maybe even isn't control of himself, but rather is controlled by a higher power itself. See, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, there's a small chance of seeing this image in Project Playtime as a loading screen that shows the prototype controlling Mommy Longlegs while she is in her demented state. And after seeing this image, as I've talked about in other videos, I wonder if when in Chapter 2 we see Mommy Longlegs go full-blown rogue and attacks us mindlessly to the point where she accidentally shreds herself to death, she wasn't even controlling herself anymore, but was rather being controlled by the prototype in some sort of almost paranormal way. It would explain why the prototype, out of all places in the factory, was waiting right beside her corpse to salvage what was left of her and bring it back into the darkness, since we already know the prototype was incredibly good at manipulating objects into something destructive, like for example him turning his alarm clock to a laser pointer to break the cameras watching him when he was first being experimented on. And now this begins to make me wonder if he was really good at manipulating objects. Maybe he was just as good at manipulating living beings in the factory like Mommy Longlegs, Huggy Wuggy, and you guessed it, Boxy Boo, to turn them into these malicious, blood-hungry machines that will kill anything that moves at whatever cost. With this information, you could even theorize that the prototype could be the cult leader based on his control over all the other toys in the factory, but at that point, that's making a lot of assumptions, so I'm just gonna leave that theory there for now. So those are the two theories. One that suggests that Boxy Boo was created by the factory to silence the co-workers who speak out about them, and another that suggests that Boxy Boo was created as a cult being to make sacrifices. Whichever of these two you believe is purely up to you. But what's in common about both of these theories is that Boxy Boo seems to only have one purpose in his life, and that's to murder at the command of others, albeit from the prototype, his own cult, or even the employees around him who created him to murder. Boxy Boo just knows one thing, and that's killing people, which when looking at it objectively makes him one of the most sinister creations of the entire factory. Even Huggy Wuggy had the humanity to let you give him a high five before he comes for your face, but Boxy, he is just entirely ruthless, and the only time we ever see him is when he's killing things. And I think that while admittedly this is a lot of speculation, clearly Boxy Boo has some darker purpose we're yet to discover, which is what makes me believe that Boxy Boo is going to be showing up in the later chapters of Poppy Playtime. And also, speaking from a practicality standpoint, it makes a lot of sense for Mob Games to put Boxy Boo inside the game. He's very marketable, he has a lot of ambiguity for theorizing as you just saw from the mountains of hidden lore behind the scenes, and overall I think everybody wants to know more about Boxy Boo. So keeping this video in mind, clearly he has a bigger purpose in Playtime Co other than just being a random side character for a side multiplayer game made in 6 months. And so while everything we know about him is purely up for speculation, I would keep your eyes peeled for him to appear in the main game sometime soon. But let me know your thoughts. Who do you think Boxy Boo is, and do you think he'll really show up in chapter 3? Am I entirely overthinking every minor detail to make something out of nothing? Comment your theories, subscribe, and peace.